Hey, my name is PolishLynx and welcome to Narcissu Zero. In this episode we are going with chapter 9 called Something More. So let's see where this is going, if our main protagonist will meet with his beloved girl. Okay. A clear November sky. The blowing wind had changed to feel like a true winter breeze. Meanwhile, on this courtyard bench, I continued to listen to this man. Okay.
そう。やっぱり探すことにしたのね。
ああ、それからは必死になって探したよ。
見つかったの？
いや、どこにもいなかった。
God damn it.
妹と二人で手の限りを尽くして、更新所にも頼んだが、結局は見つからなかった。
He said only that, sounding so lonely. He added that times were different back then.
そう。残念ね。
だけど、それからしばらくした頃に。
So saying, he began to speak again. I'm certain that he was an important official in the hospital, but for some reason he continued to talk with me. Six years later. So... Okay. It was spring again. I was already done with my internship. And so I was able to become a doctor. Before I was greenhorn, I had made it and become a doctor. Days passed by, hectically. Surprisingly, a lot of the mundane tasks that were done at the home, many could be directly applied to clinical situations. I learned that hospitals were not the only places for medical care. But every day I still worried about her more than anything. No matter what we did, we couldn't find her. If we just searched back then, I am immediately filled with regret. Why was I so stubborn over it? When I saw her last, we were just 18. This year, we'd both be 25. It seemed that I hadn't been back to the old neighborhood in 7 years. The last thing I wanted to think about was the possibility she had already died. That we wouldn't meet again. While I look at the notebook that I hadn't written in for about a year, maybe this notebook as well would never be written in again. Then, one fateful day, turning my head, I saw there a colleague of mine, an X-ray technician. What's this so suddenly?
お前の妹のひろみちゃんから頼まれたんだけど。
Hiromi did? And there was only one person of importance I'd be looking for.
先日、草加陽子って患者なら見たぞ。
What?
まあ、同姓同名かもしれないが、あの患者がお前の探しているのは。
I gasped in spite of myself. Despite everything, we had never found anything. I couldn't believe suddenly finding her like this. Where is she hospitalized? What hospital?
おい、落ち着けって。うちの金沢だよ。
Kanazawa. The hospital in Kanazawa was affiliated to the university. Kanazawa was far away from Tokyo, and there was a good chance it was the wrong person. But I went there without a moment's hesitation. I took the Shinkansen, connected with a limited express train, and headed to Kanazawa. The train car swayed, and I thought about a multitude of things. On how much the detective agencies had searched, and still hadn't found her. But I was also understood somewhat. I knew from the start that she was in poor health. If she had been living normally, then any detective agency would be able to find her with ease. But this case was different. It's difficult to search for people who have been hospitalized long term. And in her case, she was running from me, and her parents seemed to have taken her wishes into account. If that was the situation, that explains why she couldn't be found. I rushed to the other hospital. I thought about rushing to meet her, but first, I went through administrative office. If it was truly her, I wanted to meet her as a doctor. It wasn't that I was planning on surprising her or boasting. I just wanted her to see I had become a doctor. No, because it was her. I wanted her to see me as a doctor. Trying to calm my beating heart, I took a deep breath outside the hospital room. I was filled with mixed anxiety and hope. I gently knocked and slowly opened the door. Long black hair, sweet pink pajamas, bright sunlight poured through the window, and her expression was somehow both troubled and embarrassed. For it had been years, there was no mistaking her. It was her. It was Kusaka.
どうかしました?先生。
That voice brought back memories, that unchanged, slightly helpless way of speaking. Probably because of the white lab coat, she doesn't recognize me. Now that I'm meeting her, what do I say? Why did you vanish so suddenly? You annoying jerk. I should scold her and call her an idiot. And then tell her never to disappear again and hold her tightly. I thought about it over and over so many times. And now it was suddenly in front of me. Though my chest was tight, I continued to speak. It's been a while. Kusaka.
はい。
It's me. Makia.
マキエくん?
She looked surprised. Just for a moment. Then face changed to a bright, delighted expression. She gazed at me motionlessly, her eyes wet. Kusaka. We're together for how many years? Then suddenly, the most important person disappears from my life. I was able to meet her again at last. Now, what in the world would she say? And also for me, what do I say? Should I tell her I love her? However,
そう。お医者さんになれたんだね。おめでとう。
that's all she said in a monotone voice. I thought she might regret meeting me again, or on the other hand be angry or delighted. However, her reaction was out of all my imagined responses. This was completely different. Well, Kusaka, I've been looking for you ever since then.
すみませんでした、先生。
Doctor?
申し訳ないですが、今日はもう疲れましたので。
Saying no more, she lay down on the bed and turned away from me. Kusaka. Uncomprehending, I stood rooted to the spot. I couldn't find the words, nor the right thing to do. Not even I thought that our meeting would be received with great joy. She had her own reasons for wanting to disappear, and I sympathized. However, still, it had been 6 years. Could a person really change that much? Could she have changed that much, I wonder? The next day, I asked her attending physician first thing in the morning. I know what she had, and I didn't want to talk without knowing the current situation.
ええ、あまり良くないですね。
That was the first thing he said to me. Whoops. I see, okay. The attending physician told me that she had gone to several hospitals and had come to this one 6 months ago. After her second laparotomy, she hadn't done well. Laparotomy. I need to check what that is. I mean, hospital language is just too far for me. Okay, that's an easy translation. Oh. Okay. Ouch. No, if anything, she was doing worse.
さすがにこれだけ長く闘病生活を続けてますから、かなり衰弱しています。
How long?
ここには半年前からですが、もう6年ほども入退院を繰り返しているようですね。
6 years? That number held significance for me. That happened to be right around when she disappeared from me. Then Kusaka knew about her health at that time. And so she told me not to look for her, effectively vanishing. That might be more overthinking it, but I also couldn't deny it. Above all, I couldn't think of another reason. But if that's what happened, I feel intolerably sad. Make me. No. Could I be... made her attending physician?
まあキエさん、あな
Oh, he was... Okay. The attending physician looked puzzled as he said this. He didn't have to say out loud why. It would be the same as stepping off my inside track.
別に構いませんが、東京の医大病院を辞めることになると思いますよ。
Yeah, it's no problem. I answered firmly. Whoa. Up till now it had been unclear, but now everything was crystal. I had certainly wanted to be a doctor in the home. I had thought that since I was a child. Naturally, my feelings had remained unchanged. Neither a hospital nor a home. I wanted a doctor in a special place. But at the same time, no, more than that, I realized I wanted to become one for her. The reason I aimed to be a doctor was probably because I wanted to make her hopes and dreams come true. From that day on, I kept going to her. It was ultimately handled like a temporary transfer. The administration apparently guessed the circumstances. The rule was that blood relatives can become an attending physician. But, happily, that didn't apply to us. I knocked, pushed the door open and came in. Morning! I tried to make my greeting as cheerful as possible. Kusaka raised herself from the bed, and today as well, her downturned face seemed forlorn. Look, I brought you breakfast. Despite that, I continued to sound cheerful, even if it was just a charade. I pretended. In response to me, she said,
すみません。今欲しくないので。
Completely uninterested, Kusaka turned back over. Well, is there something else you'd like?
いえ、別に。
Well then, would you like to take a walk outside? Look, the weather is beautiful. I bet it'd feel great.
別に。
Now she was refusing before I even finished. With that single word, she turned back over. Anger didn't even rise. Only sadness. That embarrassed, slightly troubled, smiling face of Kusaka's. Now her eyes kept looking somewhere else in the distance. At none other than me. I see. Well, until this afternoon's physical exam. Here. Going down the hallway, I took a short breath. It was obvious that she was avoiding me. From a previous interaction, that was just the reality. Because I hadn't heard from the previous doctor that she had acted like that. And in that case, it just had to do with me. 6 years ago, he said. Most likely, she herself knew of her condition at that time. I remember from the first that her health wasn't good. And just around then, she had started to miss school frequently. So it seemed that she was still running away from me. 2 weeks later. So today I was continuing teasing her. I greeted her the same way. Her actions were the same and didn't change. Rather, it became worse. Before she answered not particularly to me, but now she said nothing and didn't answer at all. In proportion to her bad response, her condition worsened little by little. Above all, it wasn't good that she wouldn't eat. I say this as a doctor, not an individual. At least eat a little. But she didn't respond to my words. Her eyes seemed to look and not look at me. It was just like she couldn't see me, as if she gazed far off somewhere else. 1 month later, and thus the seasons were changing again. It marked the end of spring, and soon it was summer. The early cicadas began to call. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. In this situation, naturally, I meant choosing to be here. If I hadn't decided to do this, then she'd probably still be eating normally. I thought it would be for the best, but on the contrary it was worse for her. As it is, I should return to Tokyo. That was my sudden thought. Most of all, no matter how I greeted her, Kusaka no longer showed any response. When long ago she had smiled so much for me. But I can't bear seeing her as she is now. Today sure is warm. While saying this, I sat down on the folding chair next to her bed. For the past few days, though it wasn't anything particularly special, this had been the daily routine. Well, Kusaka, would you like some pudding? It's delicious. I got some pudding from the children's ward because I know how much you like it. She didn't really respond, so I continued speaking. That reminds me, in our day there was lava in the crosswalk. But nowadays it's different, there's apparently a 10-second barrier. I said with a smile. Of course I knew she wouldn't answer. And so, it was just if I was alone in the room talking to myself. Alone I continued my cheerful conversation. My laugh echoed in the dry hospital room. Somehow it seemed to be limited to this room. With a breath, I stood up from my chair. Kusaka, I think I'll go back to Tokyo. I think I'll be better, it will be better for you. Then I took out the notebooks from my bag. I don't know which number this one was anymore, but they were our exchange diaries. Here, you remember this? You don't have to write in them, I just need to hand them over. Well then. With those last words, I left the room. It had been 2 months since I'd come to attend to Kusaka. In the end, I chose to return to Tokyo. I don't know if that was the best course of action, but I couldn't think of another way. From the beginning, my reasons for coming here were to show her that I had become a doctor, and at least return the notebooks to her. That was all. I kept telling myself. God damn. After the long summer day, night descends. The big moon shows her face in the sky. It was way past lights out, and the hospital room was pitch black. I had been in this room for several months already.
どうして現れたのよ。
In the dark room, I mumbled to no one. It's not like I'm angry or I hate him. If anything, I had been resigned to never see him again, and I was happy to see him once more. But more than happiness, I feel guilty. I can give you nothing in return for seeing me. It would be difficult for me to make even donuts. That's why I wanted to disappear as I was back then. Spread out on my lap are our notebooks, the exchange diaries I received. There were somewhat familiar contents that I wrote at the beginning of them. On that day I wrote him advice on how to live alone in Tokyo. That was the last thing I wrote in the diary, the last day I saw him. But after that page, the diary continued to be filled up. Different from my small, uncertain handwriting, it continued throughout with tight, bold strokes. Inside, during that time, you wrote trivial things. Would you wait for lunch? That studying was annoying. Kusaka, did you know? The usual lava in the crosswalks, nowadays, there's a way to reflect it with a 10-second barrier. It was similar to those carefree entries from back then. There are even your rarely drawn strange illustrations. And then, in the bottom of the page margins, in the place where Yoko's memos was rewritten, as if worried about me, you wrote only encouragement. Are your hands cold? Do you cry in loneliness? You read it, so don't overdo things. And if there's ever a problem, tell me anytime. The tears I had decided not to cry upon our second meeting came spilling out. My only signature trait was false courage, and yet it was more fragile than I had thought. We're always together for so long. And forever on, I thought we'd always be together. But on the day I understood that it wouldn't come true. I felt guilty despite having done nothing. I had lost nothing, but I felt like I had. Can you make him happy? Someone said that. Someone inside me asked that question. And after much consideration, this was the answer I came to. It wasn't that I liked running away. It was just... I was a good person and wanted to remain a good person. Like when we once were talking about those who live and those who left behind. Then two could never ever meet. Nor could there be a compromise. They just couldn't step over the clear divide. It was only after entering the waiting room myself did I first understand. Falling in a hole, now waiting my turn, my future gone. It was when I first understood. And the next day, I decided to resign from being her attending physician. Partly because as long as I was near her, I judged that I was doing her harm. Partly too because it was unbearable to see her like that. As usual, I knocked and opened the door to the hospital room. I intended for this to be our final exchange before returning to Tokyo. Gone? For some reason I didn't see her anywhere. Where could she have gone? It was usual for her to avoid contacting me, but she had never not been in the room. While I was thinking, my eye suddenly caught sight of something on top of the bed. It was the notebooks I had brought back to her. Could she have written them? Flipping through the pages, I opened it to the very last page. A short line. I'm above. Above? At that one word I imagined innumerable horrible things. She couldn't be in the rooftop. Run for your run, man. As soon as I thought that, I was off in a flash. The fence wasn't very tall up there. All the awful scenarios were running through my mind. Strong breeze, the summer sky, the calls of the cicadas. There were the many pure white sheets being laundered. And under the summer sky, her back in front of the rooftop fence.
おはよう、マキエくん。
Kusaka. Contrary to my worries, Kusaka's voice was cheerful. It was just like so long ago. She turned a happy, slightly embarrassed face towards me.
読んだよ、日記。
I see.
なんていうか、ちょっと泣いちゃった。
She looked embarrassed as she said this. Once again, Kusaka opened her mouth to speak.
ねえ、マキエくん。一つだけ質問していい？
Yep, anything at all.
私を癒すあなたは何者？
Hey?
お医者様？それとも神様？
I'm neither. I'm something more. However, it's limited to you in this world. The hot sun, the cicadas buzzing. Though it was still early morning, sweat trickled down me. I could see the heat waves from the hot sun bouncing off the concrete. Also insisting it was summer were the calls of the early cicadas. Listening to the buzzing of the cicadas, I stretched out my hand. Hey, aren't you cold? I'm freezing.
そうだね。ちょっと寒いね。
Then we held hands. It had been years since we held hands, but it was just like it had always been. Small, soft, and warm.
これで通じるのは私たちだけだよね。
Of course, if you searched around the world for someone to understand, you would only find me.
そうだよね。きっとマキエくんだけだよね。だから
That day, we unexpectedly got to know each other. In spite of being helpless, she was strangely willing to go along with things. Whatever we did, wherever we went, we were always together. We spent many evenings talking through the night, created rules for the two of us. Before we realized, it was just natural to be near each other. Kusaka's existence had become one I couldn't do without. And she was weeping. There was no one else on the roof, and her sad voice echoed around. Not because sad about my life. That was for me. She cried because she was turning her back to everything we were up until now. I can't, even if it was just chance that we had met. Now being together with her like this is my own will.
でも、マキエ君は、これから何年も、何十年も、幸せに暮らして、結婚して、子供も生まれて。なのに、私が付き合えるのは、たった半年だけ。
This was our first rule. We learned not to make promises to those who came to the home. It meant not to make promises about the future to those who were within sight of death. The rule of not getting involved with those waiting their turn in the waiting room. Those living and those left behind were forever prevented from crossing the divide. Between those two, there is no compromise, no meeting halfway. Each was on the other side of a forever uncrossable boundary. Even I understood that much. I understood. And yet... Then, let's make a new promise. We'll play at the sea again. Next year. And the year after.
でも、それは、以前のルールを破ることに。
Even if it wouldn't come true, and there was no way for the crossover the boundary to the other side. There was no one else. I have to break through. Neither a doctor nor God. But something more. If for Kusaka, that was me. And for me, Kusaka was that person. I must break through the contradictions. I must break through the rules. Don't rules come with exceptions?
何よ。そんなずるい。反則だよ。
Yeah. Let's break the rules. In the early morning, the rooftop reverberated with the buzzing of the early cicadas. Mixed in with those sounds were her own cries. On that day we created a new rule. It was born after so many years. It's a promise that many are not brave enough to face. It was just between the two of us. A sacred vow. Great. Okay. God damn it. I didn't want to end yet, but I guess we have to. So, hope you enjoyed the episode, and tomorrow we'll continue with the next one, with the next chapter. See you then. Bye bye. If you want to get informed every time I upload new videos, click that annotation floating above the text, subscribe to never miss a video. To watch one of yesterday's videos, click that annotation around video on the left. Annotation around the cover of the game, which is located on the right, will get you to the playlist of the series that is currently being uploaded to the channel. When it comes to following me in other communities, all the links to these are in the description.